All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Wisconsin United Football Club podcast. I'm your host, Monte Reyment, along with Eric Gebhard on my far left. And today we got a very special guest. We got Michael LaMere, the manager of community engagement from Prevea. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we brought you in this week really to talk about injuries, more hopefully injury prevention. And so we're going to kick it off today. First of all, I always like to get a little intro, your background, and then we'll get into the show. But tell us who you are and why you're here.
Well, I'm Michael LaMere. I'm a manager of community engagement at Prevea, but I've been with Prevea for over 25 years. I've been doing sports. I've been an athletic trainer for the last 30 years. So I've been at high schools, colleges, professional sport levels, taking care of athletes for most of my life, it feels like.
Yeah, I love it. And you have a background in soccer, right?
Yeah, I've been a coach, a player, the coach for the Wisconsin United for a few years with my daughters and such. Now, of course, they're getting older and going on to college. So
Love it. So how did this partnership, and maybe Eric, you want to talk about this part, but how did that partnership with Prevea and Wisconsin United happen?
Yeah, originally we needed trainers for our tournaments, and that was going pretty well. And we were getting, people that had injuries, that had events covered, putting Band-Aids on bruises and that sort of thing. And then that went on for maybe 2 or 4 years. And then we went back to Michael and said, okay, that's great, but what else can we do for these kids? We're seeing common use injuries, overuse injuries, ACL types of injuries. There's needs with nutrition, concussions, mental health. There's all these things going on. And he said, Michael, is there something that we could do better that's more holistic for these kids? And then it's just kind of taken off from there. So there's a big initiative to do injury prevention right now. And I don't know if you want to talk about kind of what we initiated with the FIFA 11 warm-up and the band active muscle activation before practices and games.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit here. But so, Mike, back to you. What are the most common injuries you see in youth soccer? We talk a little bit about the early kids, and I'm sure they're probably like soft tissue, but then at a certain age, they probably get a little bit more serious injuries. So, maybe skip the, 8 to 10-year-olds and, we can go a little bit north of that.
Yeah. So, most of when we start going north of 10 years old and getting into like the 12, 14-year-olds, you start seeing a little bit more like ankle injuries, especially when they start growing, you're going to start seeing different types of injuries in the joints. So ankle injuries are usually their first ones, then it kind of gets into the knee injuries. Yeah. Especially when they start getting their growth spurts, you start seeing some patellar tendon issues just because of how fast they're growing and, the amount of activity they're playing. Then you kind of get into some serious injuries. Once you get to the 14, 15, 16 years old, you start seeing a little bit more of the serious injuries, like the ACLs and things like that.
Yeah, they're certainly more common in young female athletes, the ACL injuries are, but we're going to electively knock on wood again. But what's the real story there? What are the numbers? I would assume over the last 10 to 20 years, things have gotten better, so we shouldn't be as scared, but obviously we need to be alert and attuned to it. So, let's talk about female athletes and the ACLs to start with. And, not that say that guys aren't, perverse to that, but, we know they are, but women tend to have that injury more frequently.
Right. And there's a great stat out there. For every one male athlete from the ages from, 14 to 19, there's 4.5 females.
Yeah. So what's the reason?
That's crazy.
What's the reason behind that? Is it a biological thing? Is it a gender thing?
It's multifaceted. You have to look at just the structure of the body is a little bit different.
Sure.
Of course, growing is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Females tend to grow faster than the men.
Oh, sure.
So that's a big thing. But again, it comes down to really, body control, neuromuscular control, looking at different instabilities in the body, along with, possibly, other female things that go on.
Yeah. So what's changed in the last 20 years as far as injuries go? Are kids getting hurt more or less now, or are they just like you're identifying the injuries a little quickly?
I think prevention has come a long ways in the last couple of years. And I think that's where we're seeing a reduction in a lot of those injuries. Yeah. Are they still happening? Yes. We can't prevent every injury from not happening, but the prevention side has grown tremendously over the last couple of years. A few things that have changed, just like we've talked about, is the FIFA 11, which is a warm-up program for athletes to warm up properly, touching on all different aspects of warm-up, not just going around and jogging around the field one time and doing a couple stretches. We're talking about getting them ready for action.
For sure.
So they're going over sports-specific actions prior to going into a game or playing.
Yeah, we have enough history now, sports history. And Eric, you identified this early on, as the major initiative. I mean, this is all about the kids and empowering these kids to be the best versions of themselves, but hard to be the best version of yourself when you're hurt. So talk a little bit about when you guys identified that at Wisconsin United and when that initiative was put into place. And then we'll get into, some of the other stuff with the FIFA 11 and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we were doing warm-ups. So we were doing a dynamic routine, which was largely coached by coach, maybe poorly done. If at least
more of a go through the motions. Like,
Yeah.
it's supposed to. I always remember we just warmed up and never were really explained why we warmed up. It was just like, well, we want to prevent you from getting hurt. Okay, cool. But if you can give a kid, these kids aren't dumb.
Yeah.
So if you can give a kid a reason why they're doing something, they're going to be more apt to do it.
So to have a scientific model that goes through the physiology of the body rather than just you guys go off in the corner where the coach sets up. Michael came in and trained all the coaches on the FIFA 11, and then we did the muscle band activation as well. And that's consistent throughout our club. And I mean, it's going pretty well. I don't like to talk about it because I don't want to jinx it, but
We're going to knock on wood a lot in this episode.
yeah, we would see a lot. I was superstitious about March 15th because that's when girls pretty much went to their varsity teams.
Mhm.
And all that time that they spent getting out of shape through the winter, they tend to try to get in shape in one weekend. The weekend before the Monday of high school varsity soccer. And we would see, as many as 3 to 5 during that time in our sample group. And I'll just say that I don't want to jinx it, but it's been significantly lower for the last 2 years. And, if we can save one or two, it's when an ACL injury happens, it's quite traumatic and it's depressing and it's isolation of the child because that is their peer group, and if everybody else is playing sports, what are they supposed to do? So just making sure if we could save 1 or 2 a year, that's great.
Yeah, but another injury that's always brought up, and it's more common with football, hockey, but concussions, right? Soccer athletes tend to get concussions as well. You have headers, and you're using your head to go do something, and somebody else is going up for a header, and they bump heads. So, in concussions, how worried should a parent be about concussions? And then I'll let that be for you, Mike. And then Eric, what are you guys doing to, help with that prevention as well?
Well, I think the biggest thing is education with parents on what concussions are, the symptoms and signs of it. Because again, a lot of times coaches don't even realize it happens during
Can you
practice.
touch on that a little bit for those that are watching? Like, what symptoms should they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's abnormal to the kid. So, if it's an increase of headaches, dizziness, ringing in the ears, just not them being normal.
Yeah. Parents, your kids better than anybody else. Hopefully,
Correct.
So.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing because, a lot of times the kid goes home and then all of a sudden the symptoms start happening.
Yeah.
And that's important that we have to educate the parents, if not also with the athlete. I mean, the athlete's got to speak up for themselves too with that. But really, concussions haven't changed a whole lot over the years because they still happen. However, it's just an education piece that we really got to know. And then the faster we can diagnose what the concussion is, then we can get to treatment quicker and get them back on the field faster.
For sure. Good.
Yeah, so we've taken it out of the coach's hands. It's at a tournament or some of our platforms at their age of injury, which is mostly high school. Are the 4 of our playing platforms, we have trainers on site. If a concussion's diagnosed, they need a medical professional to clear them before they go back to the game. This is really important because it might be your best player.
Yeah.
You might want them back,
Yeah.
but we got to do what's best in the interest of the long term. And I think there's a lot going on with concussions and CTE, and we really don't know what the long term effects of this are. So we have to be safe. And I think at the same time, from the trainer side, I feel like people have done a good job about professionally clearing the child and getting them back. And I used to not feel that way. I used to feel like, well, what benefit to the trainer is there to clearing them? So they would just say, no, they're concussed. So just, go over there. But I think it has gotten a lot more scientific and measured.
So you guys have mentioned this a couple of times, and me being a dumb football guy, American football guy. What is FIFA 11?
So FIFA 11 is a dynamic warm-up that touches on all aspects of the game. So it's going from, to your basic jogging, to jumping, hopping, even actually bumping into each other during warm-ups.
Sure.
But it warms up the entire body, not just the lower body. Like we just talked about with our warm-up back in the day, we just did a couple jogs around the field, stretched a little bit, and we just took care of the lower body.
Right.
This takes care of the entire body because, again, the reason we brought in the mini bands and such is because we wanted to make sure we connected the core with the lower body. A lot of ACL injuries happen when the core is not connected to the lower body or is not talking to each other. So what we're trying to do is wake up the body to make sure all muscles are turned on, not just the lower body.
Yeah. And this is something that you headed or Eric brought up and you headed into it. So how often do players go through it? Is it every practice or is this prior to games? What's the sequence on that?
Every time they get on the field.
And then who runs those? Like, is it a medical staff, a trainer, or, who are, the coaches responsible for that?
So Michael came in and trained our staff, and then the coaching staff, and then the coaching staff, who is the person that's there most consistently. On top of that, he created a PDF to follow, and then we shot a video of the FIFA 11 workout and then the muscle band activation with former player Abby Wood, who graduated from our program, went to GB and then Eau Claire. And so there's no excuse to do it wrong. And if you have a question about it, it's on our website.
Yeah.
A lot of the coaches will carry the laminated copies.
Have you guys had any kickback on it?
I think people really like it. I know the kids, they seem stronger. I've heard that when a female lands on a jump, the core doesn't activate. So training all of that is very important.
That's interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah. So FIFA 11 is the most standardized warm-up, proper warm-up to prevent injury around. A lot of NFL teams have adopted it. So we notice a level of professionalism just in how we prepare. If every coach is doing the same thing and it's the proper thing throughout our program, then we feel like that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as the executive director of the program, if you can systematize every little aspect of the program, and it's all one, then it's easier to teach and transfer. So that makes a ton of sense. Good. So what does screening look like when you guys get an injury that comes to you? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so we have an athletic trainer that's assigned to Wisconsin United, who, if an athlete gets injured, the parent can call our athletic trainer saying, hey, what's going on? We do set up injury clinics throughout the year to make sure we do check in on athletes and see how they're doing. Coaches have reached out to our athletic trainer also to, hey, we had a kid get hurt this weekend. Can you follow up with them? And yeah, she does. So it's very simple. Yeah.
Yeah. And the communication loop when a player does get hurt, how does that go? Is it like, obviously you're communicating with parents.
Yep.
You have the kid communicating, telling them how they feel. You have the trainer, you have the coach, you have a whole bunch of people that are involved in that. Just that one injury.
Well, which is great to have that athletic trainer available to the parents right away, because again, some things are minor, like we talked about, and some things these get seen by another professional, a doctor or a specialist. So it's good to have the athletic trainer kind of direct traffic a little bit and then keep everybody in the loop of what's going on with that.
Yeah,
we've been fortunate recently to have our athletic trainer come out to some trainings, and then we also contract with her to cover some of our upper league games too. So now we have the potential where she could see somebody who actually is in live competition get an injury, and then on occasion she'll be at practice to check up on them, and she's been really great.
Yeah. And I would imagine part of injury prevention is the re-injury prevention, right? Coming back too soon. So when does the return to play protocol, or how does that work for your players?
So usually we work with the athletic trainer. If they are seeing a physical therapist or a physician, we'd work with them also just to see what the protocol is and such. And then the athletic trainer would take them through the steps, communicating with their coaches and their parents of what steps need to be taken at practices, so we can gradually bring them back to whatever it is. If it's from a concussion or ACL or injuries, that's how we communicate.
Signs off on that.
Usually the athletic trainer.
Yep.
Okay.
Usually I'll say there's just like there's a trajectory to your fitness and preparation. There's a trajectory from return to play. So if I'm your coach and you had an injury that's maybe like more than soft tissue, my objective for your first game is to get you in and out healthy, and then understand that you're probably not going to play in the state final that first game back, but can we get you in and out maybe right before halftime? you can see the resiliency of a child that's returning to play and how apprehensive they might be. Okay, you're out there, but you're kind of
you're
running gingerly.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get you out. Now you've been in and out of a game. Now mentally you've checked that box, and we can move on to the next one. And
the confidence to come back and play a little bit faster. And
it's
like anything else. So where do parents and coaches get it wrong when it comes to injuries, the comeback, so to speak? Where are they getting it wrong?
Well, I think
Not necessarily kids. Kids always want to be in, right? Like,
right.
I was an athlete. I always wanted to be back probably sooner than I should have been. I can recall a few times. So where you got to hold the reins a little bit.
Yeah, usually where they get it wrong is they compare their child to another child they know.
Okay.
Where it's probably two different completely injuries, or they try to compare them to a professional NFL athlete.
Yeah.
Where, Joe Blow from the NFL got...
I can't tell you who it is. When Adrian Peterson came back early,
There you go.
that was the worst thing for all of us, because every high school boy says, he did it in 6 months. I could do it in 5. And you're like, well, you're not Adrian Peterson. You don't have his genetics.
I always thought about that, with the Achilles injury I had, and then Rodgers got it right after I did. I was in 42 when I blew my Achilles out.
Yeah.
They're like, Rodgers will be back in 6 months or less. And I was like, yeah, probably will. I was already back, like, mentally fighting it, but not at a NFL.
Yeah. When that happened, every high school boy was like, yeah, well, the doctor says 12 to 14 months, but I'll be ready in 3, and the high tendency to come back and immediately get injured is what we're trying to protect them about, because now you have somebody that's been shut out for a year or a season, and now if they go back and tear the other one, now you're talking about a 2-year process, and that's pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we set up kids for the long haul too. It's making sure that, when they are our age, they don't have all the aches and pains or
we have
a knee reconstruction or something else. Yeah. So, that's where we have to make sure that we're taking care of the kid for the long haul. It's just not that for that moment.
Yeah. But I always say now the most important part of my day is the first 5 steps, because it hurts the first 5 steps when I get out of bed. Right. That's a hard thing to get over. So, all right. So, injury prevention, a lot of that goes into training, off-season training. We talk about prevention, but in terms of training, and I see this a lot. I saw this a lot in my last career with kids starting too soon on weights and other things like that. So what should, let's start with the youth, the kids that are 12 years and younger.
Mm-hmm.
What should their training week look like?
Really with strength training, talking specifically with strength training, I think, looking at 8 to 12, that's a lot of body weight work or band work. They don't need to be pounding a lot of heavy weights at that age.
Right.
Once you start getting to 12 on up, then you want to start adding the weights gradually for them.
Right.
So we can actually put a little more resistance to them so they can get a little bit stronger as they're growing. I think, the earlier we can get kids doing strength exercises, the better off you're going to be, and especially in prevention injuries, especially when they hit that growth spurt, because if they're not strength trained during their growth spurt, they're going to have issues.
I would assume
going to happen.
I would assume, I already know the answer to this. Most people should, but form and stretching is probably even more important at that age than anything else. Just getting good habits at that point, right?
Oh, exactly. And learning from one of the professionals, or coaches. We have the expertise that
being supervised when you're doing weight, right?
Yeah. And the earlier you can learn the mechanics of lifting properly, I think the better.
So, and when is it too early, Eric, maybe for specialization? I know you guys are a soccer club, and maybe this is something you might not want to talk about, and there might be conflicting things here, but, specializing in one sport, when is that decision made a lot of times for people?
Oh boy. You want to talk about racism or transgender or something No,
No.
I think it's the older you get, the harder it is to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's important at some point to identify what is your top sport, because I know, I might get crucified for that, but every time I've sent a kid to a basketball practice, the basketball coach told him he's already played his last day of soccer. So it was easy before COVID. There were clearly defined boundaries on the calendar, and then when we came back, everything was everywhere. So it's an easy thing to talk about on a Twitter post, but it's hard to execute. We try to have honest conversations with people about their workloads, and I think there's there's some coaches that work better than others. So I don't know necessarily how to manage that.
Sure.
I think when you get to be 15, if it's very difficult right now, if you're a high achiever in multiple sports, and
Sure.
if you're not, usually both sports aren't clamoring after your successes anyway. So it's a difficult thing to manage. It's an easy thing to talk about in a vacuum, and that's the tough part.
Well, it is a case. I would imagine it's a case by case, kid by kid. I think one of the things is labeling or holding somebody to something. We're all human beings, and maybe that kid is just super passionate about multiple sports, and that's what fills his cup. But back to the injury side of things, when it comes to specialization, there's and again, this is pre-2020, pre-COVID, but the specialization kids tended to have higher injuries, for a long time. So has that changed over the last 5-10 years?
No.
So specialization,
it's still happening.
Overuse,
It's still happening. But again, it's workload management too. I mean, I think the kids are getting pulled in a lot of different directions to play high level, whatever, if it's basketball, volleyball, soccer. It's making sure as a parent, you're managing that workload.
For sure.
Because again, you can be playing 3 different sports and overwork yourself and overuse. It's not just specialization. I mean, it can be really just overusing when you're playing multiple sports, especially overlapping, because everything overlaps now. With different travel leagues and everything else. So it's really just managing that workload for your child.
The best case scenario is you have 2 coaches from different sports that are communicating with each other and saying like, okay, I understand this basketball season, but you're really this event that we're going to is going to create a lot of exposure for you. Now, if on the flip side, you have the basketball state tournament, we're not going to interrupt you from that. And we have other players that will play those events.
What I'm hearing is Eric hates basketball.
Actually, that's not true. Cross country, but I think basketball and soccer complement each other quite well in the spacing and movements. But I think it's very difficult for especially a female cross country athlete to run the fall season and play club soccer. That's if you're not super prepared and you have the foundation athletically and your body starts to break down, it tends to just keep going downhill.
And again, I mean, a lot of this is, you just touched on it, is the parents, the workload, sleep, hydration, nutrition, all of that stuff factors in too, right?
Oh yeah. I think recovery, just the recovery idea has really taken off in the last couple of years. I think that's the one thing that we're trying to, work on with Wisconsin United, with the website, on all the things that we're putting on there, from nutrition to sleep to just mental health overall. So
because I mean, kids, we're just talking sports today, but all the other things that go on in a kid's life, homework for one, school, social, trying to be the cool kid, all that stuff is all factoring in. And then they have sports on top of it. There's a lot on a kid's plate, and we had it too, but I think it's even more now.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's the best part about what we're trying to do with the club and with our athletes, is to make sure that we're developing them as a person, because again, sports are going to end at some time. But if they have a good basis of how they're taking care of their body through exercise, nutrition, their mental health, sleep, you're going to live a long, healthy life.
And what are some warning signs that parents should be on the lookout for?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, sleep is a big one. If they're not getting regular sleep, if they're on their phone too long at night, I think that's a big thing. We need to get those phones put away and making sure they are getting 8 hours of sleep at night, because that's the number one thing for recovery. And that's what we're seeing, especially not even just with adults, but with kids too, is that they're just not getting enough and their batteries aren't getting recharged. So again, making sure that they are eating properly too. Not just run through McDonald's fast, drive through all the time.
Right?
It's easy.
Get hungry, and it's like, let's find the fastest way to get myself satisfied. It's the same thing with my work day. I was like, Dairy Queen's got a pretty good deal on hamburgers. I'm gonna go stop it over there.
But making sure that we are, if we are stopping at fast food places, are we taking the best option, for healthy foods? Because a lot of fast food places do give pretty good options for healthy options. So selecting those instead of the others, sometimes would definitely help. But then, giving the kids rest. I think that's the biggest thing is, when you do have that weekend off, from a tournament or whatever it is making sure they are resting and not going and pounding out another 12-hour practice somewhere else.
Yeah.
But making sure they are getting that rest and their body's recovering.
Yeah. So, and along those lines too, is when, we have owies, as Eric likes to call them, and then we have actual injuries. So when a kid says his knee hurts, what's the right response at that point? Like, go to the trainer right away? Is it, let me touch it and see if it hurts? Like, where are they going with that?
Well, usually, if the pain, subsides within, 24 hours, usually you don't need to go in. A lot of times, just some ice and ibuprofen usually takes care of a lot of stuff, or even rest.
Yeah.
However, if that pain lingers more than 24 hours, it's definitely, go to the website, get in contact with our athletic trainer. Our phone number's there, to call us, to get set up, get evaluated, because then we can direct you of, okay, is this serious or is this just an owie? And then it'll go away in the next couple of days. But then at least we can give good communication back to the coach, and the parents feel better.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Now, you had brought in some interesting stats today. So you want to spit a couple of these stats out?
I can throw out a lot of stats, even just with our program that we have kind of formed here over the last year with FIFA and the mini bands and things like that. There's national data out there on this stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just adding just the FIFA workout has reduced over 50% of the injuries for ACLs.
Wow.
And that's what, they're putting out, which is incredible. And that's not just FIFA putting that out. That's national academic medical.
And there's enough data now. There's enough student athletes and adults that are in this program now. They can actually track this.
Exactly. And then putting, just some neuromuscular education in has reduced female ACLs by 60%. Just putting those neuromuscular exercises in the warm-up has reduced that.
So it hasn't cured it, but
no, it has reduced.
It has reduced.
And that's huge, especially, when my oldest daughter was playing, and, we had a rash of ACLs that year on her team. And I think that's when Eric and I really got serious and started really talking about, like, what the heck's going on? Like, this is crazy going on. And we made those changes quickly. It has really reduced our injuries in the program too, which is huge.
Yeah. We've gone from 6 to 10 a year to there's one that I know of this year. And again, it's something we don't speak about, but and you can go 2 or 3 years with none, and then it seems like everybody's dropping, and
the averages come back.
But but the isolation of it and the recovery, and some kids don't ever come back from it mentally. So if we can prevent some of those,
and the good news is you guys have the data now that show that something works.
Yeah,
that's huge and important.
And I think we have a big enough sample size that it's obviously lower. Definitely lower.
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, you can't not have it happen. It's going to happen, but you can reduce it. That's huge.
Well, and I think we're scratching the surface. I mean, we got a lot more to do. Yeah. And Eric and I both know that, where we need to make sure we continue to grow on this, because I think there's more we can do to reduce, even more.
What other stats you got?
Looking at second ACLs, because again, sometimes the second one happens also. But yeah, if you're younger than 20 years old, your chance of re-tearing is up to 29%. And again, that's because of growth. I mean, because you're still growing at that point too. So usually, with ACL surgeries, we can correct it at that point of your age and your growth, but you're still growing. So there is a possibility of re-tear.
Sure.
Even if you do everything completely right, which we've seen in the club, where, we've had second ones too, where, the athlete did everything to the book. We back out and didn't show anything that would have not reduced her, for her to come back, and it happened again. So it's not, we try to prevent the first one, but then you have to try to prevent the second one from happening too. But that does happen. It does happen from there. The biggest thing is, though, there's still 400,000 ACLs that happen every year across the country. So, that's a lot of ACL surgeries that are still happening out there. So there's still work for us to do.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to go to school to be a doctor, kids, go for ACLs. There's still business. There's AI is not taking your job on that one. No. Love it. Any other ones you want?
No, that's about all.
You got it? All right.
That's all you could do.
We just talked about going to school and what AI is going to take and what's not. But looking forward, let's, kind of like look into the future. What does sports medicine look like maybe in the next 5 years? Because we've had so much advancement of technology in the last 5 years ourselves. So,
well, exactly. I like to talk about our imaging, because imaging, has come a long ways. MRIs, you can get down to the, crazy depths of of your body right now. But one of the MRIs that we just added at Prevea is called Springbok, and it's a muscle analysis, and we're using this as prevention, but we're also using it as actually looking at fat for fat reduction or weight loss. However, for on the sports sides of it,
How does that work? I sign up for that, right?
you can sign up for it right now. It's a 15-minute scan. So again, it's an MRI scan that we can take your entire body done in 15 minutes. And what it does is actually look at your balance of your muscles.
Okay.
So again, it tells us where you're strong, where you're weak, what we need to work on, which it gets down to the depths of, the percentages of your muscles.
Yeah.
Talking about prevention right now, I mean, if I knew exactly, if you're stronger on the right side and the left side and we can prevent that, that's huge because that's going to prevent an ACL right away or shin splints or an ankle injury or even a hip injury down the road. So for 15 minutes, I mean, it's a great scan to get, and then you actually know, and then you can take those results to your PT or your strength coach and say, hey, this is what I need to balance out. And they can actually see going, whoa, I would have never saw that. I mean, just looking at you, I could not see that.
Yeah.
So it's the imaging and the things that we can use imaging now to prevention instead of always seeing it on the backside where we're looking for an injury.
So yeah, you said like a 15-minute, it's a 15-minute scan. They come into Prevea, they get the scan. How do they set that up? They just call into Prevea?
Yeah, we have it on our website, and just call into our sports medicine site, and they'll set you up right away. Like I said, for 15 minutes, it's, most MRI scans when we're looking at for ACLs or any injuries, it's like 45 minutes.
Okay.
So this takes your entire body in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome. They should probably do that before the season starts then, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can do it at any time of the season. And it's good for even adults too, who are, competitive runners or things like that, run marathons, such, they can get it looked at too.
Nice. So if you could change one thing, and we'll wrap this up here in a minute, but I'm going to start with Eric and then I'll get back to you, Mike, because we've been throwing stuff at you. Eric's over there patiently waiting to talk. He likes to.
No, that's fine.
So if you could change one thing about how youth sports handles injuries now, what would you do?
I wish we had started this sooner. And
You can't do that because it started now. So that doesn't count.
I think maybe there's not enough time spent preparing your body athletically. And then I don't, that I think that's the next iteration of what we have to tackle is that we do the strength training with the bands, but is there something more? I see, people do private lessons and they work on their technique to death, but what can they do to prepare? The greatest gains are going to come if you have an athletic body.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to just go into a private trainer and shoot for an hour 3 times a week for 10 weeks in a row, you're really not going to get the gains that if you prepare yourself just to be an athlete. So we're looking at how do we incorporate that into our program next and then balance all that we need to do to prepare ourselves to play. So
Love it. Good. Same question for you, Mike.
Well, I think it really comes down to 2 things to kind of go off of Eric's. One is recovery time, trying to find that time for recovery. And every athlete's different for that. And that really comes down to my second point of education of the parents. We need to continue to educate the parents on what's out there for recovery, how we should be recovering for our athletes and making sure, because that's a lot of prevention just right there. I mean, we don't need to have all the fancy exercises and bands and all that stuff if we're just taking care of our body. But also to go off of what Eric was saying is our next step, what else can we do to help them with recovery, to educate the parents of what we should be doing strength training wise and making the entire athlete, looking at their nutrition, their mental health and everything that we've just talked about today.
For sure. Final takeaway, what's the one thing you want parents to implement or start doing this week for their child?
go to our website and look at the resources.
Use the resources. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's body weight workouts on there. There's nutrition. There's, I think the FIFA 11 workout. There's a video. There's slides of it. I mean, it really is dummy proof. If you do the work, which is minimal, if you point and click, every resource that you need is on our website. You know, and it's a good way to get acquainted. These are the 3 or 4 things that I can do starting right now in my bedroom at home. I can do a body weight workout.
Love it. Mike?
Same thing. I think educate yourself on things that are out there that are really important, like strength training, like mental health, like nutrition, that again are all on our website. This is why we did what we did. Yeah. Because we put the most accurate, most up-to-date information out there for you. you don't have to Google. You don't have to, cipher through all the social media people that, says this is better than this. We have the information that's scientifically proven.
Yep. Scientifically backed. There's a reason you're doing what you're doing, and I love it. So I know Eric on the private circles is giving out your cell phone number, but but how can people find you or reach out? What's the best way to do that for you guys?
You can go to Prevea.com, or you can actually go to the Wisconsin United.com website. All our information is on there. We have actually a specific webpage just set up for Wisconsin United that has our information out there. My phone number is on there. Is there? Well, my work one. Yeah. Not myself, but my work one's there. But great way to get in contact with us if you have injuries or if you need more information on anything that we talked about today.
Love it. Well, guys, that was the Wisconsin United football program with Mike LaMere. Make sure to check into their website. Injury prevention is such a huge thing. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.